Hello, my name is Anke Plagnol. Many thanks for inviting me to talk about subjective well-being in the labor market. The issue that I want to talk about today concerns gender inequalities in the labor market. As you're probably aware, in many countries we observe employment rates that are lower for women than for men. Women are often underrepresented in higher level positions, and in many industries we can observe a significant gender pay gap. Now, there are many reasons for these observations, and most of these reasons are related to labor market withdrawal and lack of career progression. So, for example, we can look at gender norms. And I should say that actually the reasons I'm presenting here, this is a very partial list. There are many more, but I'm just mentioning some of the research that I have conducted in the area. So, for example, we can look at gender norms. So husbands often tend to out-earn their wives, and therefore it often makes sense for couples that the woman stays home after childbirth if she earns indeed less. But what I looked at with one of my colleagues, Vanessa Gash, is whether there's also psychological premium of having a partner pay gap where one partner makes more money than the other. And indeed, we saw that in some circumstances there is a psychological premium for men, but not necessarily for women. Now, we can also look at job satisfaction. So there is this assumption that women may select into work. Indeed, for example, Andrew Clark has observed that women tend to report higher levels of job satisfaction than men. So some people argue that maybe they select into work, so that means that they might have the option to opt out of the labor force if they don't like the jobs. And indeed, that's something we observed might be true for women in low-quality jobs after childbirth. In another study, we considered whether job satisfaction before childbirth is related to when women return to work. And indeed, we could see that in the UK, at least, women with low levels of job satisfaction before giving birth tend to return to work later than women who really enjoyed their jobs before giving birth. So this might already be an option for policies that maybe policies that improve women's job satisfaction might make them stay in the labor market after childbirth. Now, many studies have looked at the challenges that women face of combining work and other responsibilities, such as unpaid work. So this could relate to childcare responsibilities, other caring responsibilities, and household tasks. In some recent research with some of my colleagues, we looked at the mental load. Now, this relates to household management tasks. So, for example, who organizes birthday parties? Who thinks about whether the children need new clothes or organizes what needs to be ready for school the next day? So these cognitive tasks, or also called the mental load, are also unpaid work tasks, which are often done by women. And as this is often invisible work, it tends to be neglected and shouldered disproportionately by women. In our studies, we looked at whether the division of the mental load may be improved during the pandemic, and we saw while men and women both tended on average to do more unpaid work than before the pandemic, the division of labor did not necessarily change. Now, another thing I want to briefly address here is the long work hours culture that we observe in many countries. So this is related to the ideal worker culture where work is prioritized. So good workers are workers that spend many hours at work. Long work hours basically signal commitment and performance. Now, engaging in a long work hours culture can be very difficult for people with caring responsibilities because they simply cannot stay very long at work. So this, again, might disproportionately affect women with caring responsibilities. And of course, there are many, many other reasons why women might not progress in the labor market or remain in the labor market. So again, this was just a very partial list. However, let's have a look at policy challenges. So could we actually devise policies that change any of this? Some of the reasons that I mentioned are related to norms. For example, the long work hour culture norms or gender norms. Can we change these through policies? Well, not directly, but policies can change behavior, and once behavior changes, then norms might also slowly change over time. It's also important to make sure that any policy solutions we propose do not focus just on women, because that may actually marginalize them. So, for example, when we say that people with caring responsibility, maybe mainly women, have the right to work from home, this will just marginalize them and might then make it less likely for women to be seen as ideal workers, as desirable employees. We also need to consider unintended consequences. So for example, now during the pandemic, many people started working from home. So should we implement a right to work from home? This might be a very good idea, but an unintended consequence could be that then people would engage in even more unpaid work than beforehand, because now they're constantly at home. And indeed, it has been observed that unpaid work increased during the pandemic for people working from home. So the policy proposal I want to focus on then is that of working time reduction. And you often see this in the press, or policy proposals referred to as the 4-day week. So here the idea is to shorten the work hours of full-time employees without a reduction in pay. So that's quite important, that there's not a reduction in pay. And the assumption here is that people do the same amount of work, but in less time. So instead of defining full-time as being usually 36 to 40 hours, full-time is then being defined as being 30 to 32 hours. So what is important here is that it's available to all employees, not just based on caring responsibilities, for example, because again, that might marginalize some workers. And there are some very fantastic reports, for example, by my colleague Hee-Jung Chung, which I would encourage you to have a look at. So what are the benefits of policy like this? Well, this should lead to a better balance between work and non-work activities. It might also change how we value work and leisure. And there are many well-being benefits. People have more time to spend on what makes them happy. There's a longer weekend. So it should increase satisfaction with work-life balance, life satisfaction overall, possibly also job satisfaction, because people will have more time for rest and maybe then have more energy and focus for their paid work. Could also improve relationship satisfaction because people can spend more time with their families, again, might be less stressed, so bring less stress from the work to the home life. So it might quite hopefully lead to improvement over mental health. Then policies like that could eliminate social inequalities, including gender inequality. Also, these are not brand new proposals. There are companies that have implemented 4-day work weeks, and they often report an improvement in productivity and also creativity, perhaps because employees get more rest. We can also think about improvements in children's outcomes, because now they're spending more time with their parents. And what some companies have already reported is the reduction in absenteeism, turnover intentions, and levels of burnout among their employees. So now I want to quickly thank my many collaborators that have worked on research related to this and other topics with me. And thank you very much for your attention.